reaction from Republican Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullin. Senator, thank you for being here. I just want to pull back and look at a big picture because you had a real world job before you became a politician. You were at age 20, I believe you took over your father's plumbing business. You worked on that for about a dozen years. And I mean, that's a real job. What Biden and the others are dealing with are these major industrial policy plans dealing with mega billion-dollar companies. What is he doing for the smaller companies in America?
Well, he's not. You know, I look back at when my wife and I got started when I was 20 years old, and we literally had nothing. And we were fortunate enough to grow this company to the largest scrubbers company in the region, and employed hundreds and hundreds of people. We were blessed in that. But I don't think my kids could do that in today's economy and Biden economy that you're finding out right now. What you see is you see inflation at 16%. You see groceries up at 20%. You see energy costs up 36%. And 72% of the American people right now are saying that they're spending more than their paycheck is coming in. That's ridiculous when you think about that, David. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but in a sense, I kind of am. When you have those kind of numbers, there's no one in the right mind that could actually think that that is something you want to go around the country and tout. But then we find out over the weekend that there's cocaine in the West Wing. So maybe that is where they're getting the idea that everything's just fine because they're not living in reality because of what they're doing in the West Wing. And I'm very serious about that because something doesn't make sense.
The whole industrial policy idea has been tried many, many times throughout history over the past several hundred years, and it hasn't worked out well. It assumes that the government knows more about investing money than the private sector does. And of course, it's not their money they're investing either. It's other people's money. It just doesn't seem to work out, except for some very well-connected big, again, these billion-dollar corporations who can afford all the extra regulatory costs and tax costs.
That's right. That's right, David. I've said this multiple times that the U.S. government shouldn't create jobs. When they're telling you that they're creating jobs and they're touting their economy, that means that they believe in big government. The government's responsibility was not to create jobs. It was to create an environment where entrepreneurs could create jobs. And as I said earlier, in this environment, it is almost impossible to start a business because of the cost to just get moving down the road, trying to find people, trying to comply with the mountain of regulations that are there. It's actually working against you. And that's why you're seeing consolidation of large corporations all over the place, because the small guys, which represent, by the way, 75% of the Oklahoma's economy and over 50% of the U.S. economy, they aren't able to do startups anymore. And then at the same time, you have Janet Yellen and you have Secretary Blinken going to Japan, or not Japan, I'm sorry, China. You're having Secretary Blinken and Secretary Yellen going to China to try to appease them because they're the second largest economy. I'm sorry, but that appeasement doesn't work with a communist dictator. Well, that's why you need to have more stability. And underneath Trump, we had stability around the world because he believed in peace through strength. And that's not what we have here. And so we have volatility all through our economy. Well, and we don't have good leaders in the White House, to be quite frank.
The interesting thing about Yellen's trip is she's viewed as playing kind of softball with China while they're playing hardball with us. Not only are they spying on us from these balloons, et cetera, and having all these spy centers throughout the United States, but they just had these restrictions on the materials, the minerals that we need for batteries. They're keeping them at home. And at the same time, we are restricting development of those minerals here in the United States.
You know, I was on the phone this weekend with some different investors, and we were having some long conversations about what we really need to do moving forward. Right now, we have the strategic oil supply, but because of what China is doing, and understand that China controls 4 of the largest lithium mineral mines out there. If they're going to control that, then we need to start looking at having truly a lithium strategic supply inside the United States. What does that look like? How do you get your hands on that? And then how big does it need to be? Do we need to have 30 days, 90 days, or a year? Because if this Biden dream of going with zero combustible motors, especially in our own military, how are we going to be able to build batteries if we're going to be dependent on China, who's our largest adversary right now, to receive the material from? When we were energy independent underneath Trump, now we're more reliant on China and OPEC than we've ever been. It's absolutely absurd. And yet he's going to go around the country and tout his Biden great economy that's out there. I don't get it.
Well, so far, the American public doesn't get it either because he's not doing so well in the polling on economic matters. Senator Mullin, thank you very much. Appreciate seeing you.
David, thanks for having me on.
Of course. Coming up,